some of what you described, I have some knowledge of, because I vote, I'm registered, I've even lobbied politicians in New York State, elected representatives. I've sent letters to senators and House of Representative people, and the question I have for you is, how would one articulate to an elected federal representative something that they would pay attention to? Because like I go into their websites, I've heard Hillary Clinton speak in New York State, you know, I followed Schumer, and I've become very disturbed by some of what I've learned, and your film kind of crystallized some of what I've become aware of, especially in the last 4 or 5 months of this fiscal catastrophe that we're in the midst of. What would one say to try to get somebody's attention? Like, right. I'm a member of Move On, you know, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do you have an impact beyond voting?
Well, I would say that, by the way, before we start, thanks for your question, Bert, but before we start, I just want to thank Eugene and Claudia for hosting tonight, and it's really an honor to be here, and I've never done this before with an iChat, so this is kind of cool. But I'm a huge fan of Eugene's work, so I'm really thrilled to be a part of their festival. But to answer your question, you know, the most powerful thing we have is our vote. We don't get to vote that often for presidents. We get to vote quite a bit for congressmen and senators. That's certainly, that's, I think, the loudest way that we can speak to our elected officials. But, you know, right now, the funny thing about our film right now is that although our film argues for fiscal responsibility at the federal level, nobody in our film is arguing for a balanced budget in 2009. That wouldn't make any sense. We're going to have a huge budget deficit next year. We're probably looking, just to give you a quick number, in the film cited that we would have a $410 billion budget deficit in 2008. It actually was bigger than that. By the time the film was finished before the end of the fiscal year. So we ended up with a $455 billion budget deficit in 2008, largest budget deficit ever. Next year's budget deficit, we're looking at $1.2 trillion.
Yeah, I've read that. I've heard that.
Obama says it's going to get bigger. You know, it may be that size for several years to come. So it doesn't make sense to balance the budget in the next few years because of the state of our economy. But to tell our elected officials what we want is we want fiscal sanity in Washington. We haven't had that for a long, long time. And I guess I hope that answers your question, but it is it's a complex set of issues. So trying to speak loudly and clearly about what we want financially from our federal government is a little bit tricky for the reasons I just mentioned. But anyways, thank you for your question. It's kind of a tough question. I hope that answered.
That does help.